Crime, a controversial social media personality, remains behind bars for now. The judge in Chud the Builder's case is keeping his $1 million bond in place. Chud, whose real name is Dalton Etherly, is charged with attempted murder, aggravated assault, reckless endangerment, and employing a firearm during a dangerous felony. He was arrested last week for a shooting outside the Montgomery County Courthouse, while the victim is recovering. Today, a judge locked in a more than $1 billion bond he'd previously set. But before court wrapped up, the judge said someone online offered to pay his bond. Those details are still being worked out this afternoon. And at one point during today's hearing, a man was asked to leave for reacting to video playing in the courtroom. While he was being escorted out, he made a comment about a, quote, two-tiered justice system. That's when the judge ordered him to be taken into custody.
Man, oh man, the Chud the Builder's supporters are coming out in full-fledged. So Chud was in court yesterday, and they was there all over the place. These supporters are coming out from the woodwork. They're online. They're saying they're going to post his bail because we know that his bail was reduced to $1 million, right? It was reduced to $1 million, but right now, while he's going with this case, he's not allowed to do anything online. If he can get the $1 million, but remember, he can't use that money he got in the Give, Send, Go, right? But you had people getting kicked out the courtroom. One of those guys was Jake Lang, and we know that this guy is a W supremacist, a hardcore racist. He doesn't care. He gets online. He says all kinds of wild and vicious things towards black people, right? You know, and he's trying to rally up the troops to get money, to get people to get Chud the Builder out because they agree wholeheartedly with the things that Chud has been doing. They are 100% 10 toes down with Chud the Builder.
Go back, AIPAC, go back. That's the AIPAC building right there. White Christian men are not going to sit around while you turn our children into a bunch of
creeps and weirdos in politics, and let's welcome one of them right here, Jake Lang. So Jake Lang here ran in Senate for Florida, which he lost. And now he does these social media things where he does crusades as a Christian and basically does anti-Muslim stuff, anti-Islam stuff. So like, for example, he posts, things like this, where he says, we have no fear of worshiping Muslims in Christ Jesus. But what Jake doesn't tell you is he was chatting up with my 15-year-old decoy. So let's see what he had to say then. By the way, he says he's crazy.
Now that was Jake.
That was one of the things I said in the opening segment was, we were told that y'all took this word back and took all the power from it. But it feels like what you did was give more power to the word.
Yes.
Because you've convinced yourself that you've eradicated white people from being able to say it. Now, when one says, well, you hadn't stopped me and says it, it's almost they treat it like it is an excuse to kill. Now somebody is Chud, and I don't believe it's going to be somebody he confronts I don't think it's going to be somebody he confronts in the street either. Several of these big black streamers, rappers, athletes have got bounties, public bounties out on this guy's head of $50,000 and more for the first person that, not kills him, but attacks him. And then, so we're either going to end up with Chud and somebody saying the N-word offended them so much that they had to be over it. Or B, we're going to end up with Chud, body that attacked him after he said the N-word. And it's going to make for a very, very interesting.
There's a huge update in the Chud the Builder case. Dalton Etherly's affidavit of complaint has been made public. In the official affidavit, not a single word about Dalton uttering a racial slur towards Joshua Fox. Not a single word about him provoking the fight. Without provocation, Dalton's legal justification of self-defense is entirely intact. January 10th, 2026, 18 weeks before the Etherly incident, Joshua Fox had commented on Facebook showing premeditation to fight Dalton to launch his Twitch streaming career. Even if we set the self-defense aside for just a moment, the affidavit fails to outline any actual crime. Let's look at the state's own words chronologically. Dalton Etherly and Joshua Fox engaged in a verbal altercation. A verbal argument is not a felony. At most, it's a misdemeanor, disorderly conduct that would apply to both men.
Now you see, they're just going out to get these W supremacist lawyers that's going out of their way to ignore the facts. Now, they know that he put a post up. They said grand finale, there'd be an unalive chimp on the ground. They saw him going around antagonizing black people. And guess what? those same people would not tolerate a black person because they use black people in the most negative light. Like the guy said, some big black guys, or they're going to put some money on his head and he'll end up being unalive. And they always talk about the violence that black people enact on them. So they would never tolerate a black person because they're already afraid of a black person going up into their communities. They would never tolerate that, right? So now all of a sudden, they're okay with him doing this though. They're okay with him going into the community, right? And doing these things to us, and we should just shut up and allow it because it's just the word, right? That's what we should, despite the history, right? Despite everything that's transpired in this country between black and white, we should just shut up and get over it, right? Now let's look at what happened when he was in the courtroom. Now, these people are very upset because they want Chud out of jail. They're steaming mad because they're used to being I'm W and I say so. We get to tell you what to do. We get to, we get to harass you. We get to put laws on you. We get to do all kinds of things to you, and we get away with it. So now, for the last maybe 10 years, history has been pushing back on them, and they can't handle it because they believe that they have a right to govern you, and you have a right to shut up. They are the apex predators on this planet, and we are going to govern the planet the way we see fit. And ain't no primate going to tell us what to do. That's the way that they view you. So they can walk up to you and call you the N-word and call you all kinds of names and come into your community and do whatever they want. And they'll just say it's just words. It's just words. But you can't do the same to them, though. No, you can't do the same to them because you're violent. You are a violent beast that at any given time you can snap. And we can't have you around. We can't have you around our people like that. This is the way that they behave. So they still have more attorneys doing this.
We now have this affidavit of complaint from the police, sworn under oath. And so what I'm looking for is, what are the facts in this affidavit, one, that are consistent with the crimes charged and inconsistent with innocence of those crimes, just on their merits? Have you met the legal elements of the crime? Are there facts being offered here to support the criminal charge? And two, was there evidence of a racial slur, the kind of provocation that could lose Dalton self-defense? And three, is there evidence that Dalton was the initial aggressor in this confrontation? Those are the big vulnerabilities to Dalton Etherly's legal defense: provocation, initial aggressor. And of course, in addition to overcoming self-defense, the state simply has to prove the crimes beyond a reasonable doubt, each and every element of the criminal charges against Dalton. And that's what I'm looking for in this affidavit of complaint. And I was shocked when I read it, because literally none of that is in the affidavit of complaint. There's not a word about any of that. There's not a word about a racial slur. There's nothing that explicitly says Dalton was the initial aggressor. Much like the video, of course, people look at this affidavit and they seem to see what they want to see. They interpret the words in the way that's most favorable to how they feel about this confrontation and this shooting. But when you look at this affidavit objectively, there's no explicit statement that Dalton Etherly was the initial aggressor in this confrontation. None. And in fact, there's nothing in the affidavit that's inconsistent with Dalton Etherly simply not being guilty of these crimes, completely independent of self-defense. How could I put it? The main criticism you'll hear of my take on this affidavit of complaint is that it's just an affidavit of complaint. The burden here is for the police to demonstrate that they have probable cause to bring charges, not to prove Dalton guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. That's not what their obligation is to do here. Later, at trial, of course, they need to prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt and disprove self-defense beyond any reasonable doubt. But here in this charging document, they just need to have probable cause. And probable cause is an extremely low burden. I don't think it's this low. I don't think this affidavit even shows probable cause. But probable cause is such a low burden that judges will sign off on basically anything and say it satisfies probable cause. Let's pretend this affidavit meets that standard and establishes probable cause. Well, that's reason to arrest. That's reason to put this before a grand jury or get an information, however Tennessee does that, to get Dalton Etherly into trial. But I don't really care about probable cause because I know it's a low standard. I know it's always met. There was never any question that some judge was going to approve probable cause here if the prosecutor wanted it, and clearly the prosecutor does. That's not the question. That merely leads to an arrest and a trial. The real legal question here is, will Dalton Etherly spend 60 years in a cage? Will he be found guilty? Will he be convicted on the legal merits beyond any reasonable doubt? That's what I care about. So what I'm looking for is facts that support that proof of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
Because the thing is, with all of them white supremacists coming up to court to support him, that demonstrates his influence over extremist elements. See, he didn't mobilize these individuals known for all of this political extremism and public disruption. So his ability to bring these volatile demographics up in a legal proceeding, that indicates that his release would serve as a rallying point for further unrest and more organized extremist activities in the community. And it would be an escalation of threat to public safety. The fact that his supporters went in there causing a damn disturbance like that, severe enough to require ejections and handcuffs and contempt of court charges, that shows a blatant disregard for law and order. You understand? So releasing an individual like that, who acts as a lightning rod for that kind of unlawful behavior, that increases the risk and public safety for everybody. And having all of them white supremacists in there, some people believe that that could be like some form of witness intimidation. Yeah, if he's in there bringing his supporters in there and they're acting a fool like that, they're willing to disrupt a secure environment like a courtroom. That raises serious questions about their behavior outside of the courtroom. And releasing him could really embolden these supporters to harass and intimidate and threaten witnesses involved in the case, and that'll undermine the integrity of the process. Yeah. And, you know, the judge ordered Etherly to adhere to a strict gag order and refrain from social media. So the actions of these supporters, that suggests that his message will still continue to be broadcasted through proxies, because we're seeing a lot of that now. There was some Asian dude, I don't know what his name was, but he was at the proceeding and he was outside the court lying his ass off trying to put out false information to the public. Did y'all see that? Some Asian guy talking about, yeah, I saw some footage of the surveillance camera and it shows that the black guy was the aggressor and he was beating Chud. Now all of this is false. He's just saying shit. And he didn't see nothing. He didn't see nothing. So he was outside kind of online, putting out some false information online. Also, the Myron Gaines out here crying and trying to put the cape on for Chud. Now, remember, they're caping. These are immigrants. Now, this is our minority coalition, ladies and gentlemen. This is our minority coalition, the black, brown, Asian, all that minority coalition, siding with a white supremacist who tried to unalive an innocent black man. This is that minority coalition, ladies and gentlemen. Just let that sink in. You understand? This is why delineation is so very important, ladies and gentlemen. The whole myth of the automatic model minority, no. That concept of a broad model minority coalition assumes that shared skin tone or non-whitey status equates to shared political goals. In reality, it doesn't. Trying to group distinct immigrant populations with the foundational population, that ain't it. Many of these groups, they operate out of an immediate self-interest and assimilation, meaning that their political alignment can easily shift to support these systems that actively work against the foundational lineage. And they are proxies. Many of them want to be proxies for the dominant society's white supremacists. That's why they use these people as buffers or mouthpieces, because they're technically non-white T, but they're also non-FBA. That's what y'all got to understand. They're non-white T, but they are also non-FBA.
You about it. Y'all let me know what y'all think, man. If you made it this far in the video, hit that like button, subscribe to Street Media TV, leave your comments in the comment section. Remember, I love y'all. Till the next time. Peace.